lovelies. Here's the delayed comments for the past week. 77F my dog, which is a reference to the last leg, I think. Says, this was well done, thank you so much, when talking about the D&D 5th edition SRD audiobook that I did. So you're very welcome, dogfucker. Yeah, that's the thing that exists. If you want to go and listen to it on the channel, it's got its own playlist. Or if you want to download it, you can get it from drive-thru, the only ones that had storage big enough. And yeah, you can grab it and download it there if you're so inclined, and leave a tip. That would be lovely. Thank you. On my Pathfinder review, which has been very contentious, Mario the Evil DM says, in my humble opinion, you're spot on. I gave Pathfinder 2nd edition to a friend of mine who loved Rollmaster, so he of course fell in love with Pathfinder 2nd edition. For me, it's overcomplicated for nothing. I love Shadow Dark, which is the opposite end of the spectrum. For me, simplicity is always better, but for some they need rules for everything. That's good for them. Yeah, I agree. The thing is, it's possible to have simple systems that are deep in their implementation. Sometimes loose systems have more scope than really tightly ruled systems. I don't think Pathfinder 2nd edition is as complex as Rollmaster. I don't think it's even as necessarily as complex as Pathfinder 1st edition, but there are aspects to it that are certainly counterintuitive and weird. The actual Penty, who I'm not sure who that is, commented on the OGGM's video saying, hope you're doing well. But I'm not sure whether they're talking to me or the OGGM. So I don't know. Mistaking us one for the other. That'll make OG's day, I'm sure, to be mistaken for me, and possibly vice versa, because he's had a lot less controversy than me. Speaking of the OGGM, he said, I'm his inspiration, which is very, very sweet of you, OG, but you should probably find someone less contentious to be your inspiration. And apparently, according to further conversation between Judd Goswick and the OGGM, I am the OGGM's grandfather. This must involve a time machine at some point, so I'm looking forward to that. Judd comments on one of the Red Rooms videos where we talked about streaming games online. Judd says, online players let me play with a good group of people from both sides of the pond. It's also cool seeing your games played. Hopefully that has a promotional effect, speaking to them. Yeah, I wasn't originally a fan of online play, and it certainly has its own unique challenges and problems, technical issues, people talking over each other due to the time delay and not necessarily being able to see each other. People take the scheduling less seriously. You know, there's a whole bunch of issues with online play, but I think it's still worth it. More Kalergi Plan comments. Lexa Tuller says, the only proof you need is in a video. Well, I'm not going to promote their nonsense. He says that video proves it's happening. The video has 3 parts, but all you need is the first part. Well, none of which addresses the issue, right? It's a very simple challenge to prove me wrong, right? You just have to show me the Kalergi Plan in the book that supposedly contains Kalergi's plan, right? Not his speculations, not his predictions, not his ideas about how things could be or how he'd like things to be, but a plan. I think he was just prescient. Paddy's Parlour says, it's really easy to be caught in between some of your favourite creators' streams these days, replying to the Red Room. Always try to make the rounds and pop in and say hi. So yeah, they've been running various games online, but not necessarily getting a lot of traction. And yeah, me neither. I think a lot of people go into streaming games thinking, "Oh, we'll be the next Critical Role," but you're not voice actors. You don't have the expensive setup and all the rest of it, and you don't need it. That doesn't represent gaming as it is. I think streams are just a fun way to keep your hand in to playing, to allow for more games, which is always nice. And if you are a producer, to promote your other stuff, which is what I really should be doing. Instead, I've launched into this project to play everything on my shelf at least once, which is over on Grim Streams. Please go and subscribe, because I want to get the subs over there to 500. Liberal Hyena says, on my previous comments video, I perceive a potential dilemma in the burgeoning comment response format that you may wish to consider. As the videos in which you respond to comments on other videos are now attracting comments of their own, I'm wondering whether there's a need for another series of videos in which you respond to these comments, or whether you plan to either incorporate these into the existing videos or simply abandon the idea altogether. The alternative seems to be endlessly self-replicating series in the manner of two mirrors facing each other. I dare say this might be manageable were it not for the proclivity of certain viewers to make comments of no particular worth at any opportunity simply because it exists. Well, I'm going to pick and choose comments, so I really shouldn't reply to yours in order to prevent that infinite recursion. So, moving on. Brian says he watches live plays to see how others deal with gameplay and mechanics. Yeah, that's the other thing. I don't watch many or any live plays really, except on rare occasions, which kind of makes me wonder why I do the live plays, but there is an audience out there for them somewhere. Tens of people at least are interested in seeing authentic, unedited play, so good for them, I guess. But I have occasionally dipped into them for the same sort of reason, really, to finalise a buying decision or to try and grok what the appeal of a particular game is, particularly with Apocalypse World ones. Not that I came away any the wiser in that case. I don't know. Let's see. Skip that one. Okay, an older video, which I did a kind of bait and switch on the OSR is being destroyed by the right wing. Banjosick commented on that. He said, "The culture of the information age is libertarian, not hippie. Libertarianism is on the conservative spectrum. In my school, the jocks were playing as much TTRPGs as the nerds, and most of us were merit-oriented, pro-bullying as an expression of testing the merits of other kids, and were competing hardcore on who was the school's best GM." Okay, I think your experience is far outside of the norm. I think if you go back and you read something like the Declaration of the Independence of Cyberspace, look at the kinds of people that were involved, look at the culture at Apple, for example, things are very hippie. And there is left libertarianism as well as right libertarianism. Libertarianism is not, or at least should not be, conservative. Unfortunately, it's been hijacked by economic laissez-faire types who claim to be libertarian, but don't really seem to have wrestled with the fact that the inevitable result of economic libertarianism is a corporatocracy, a dictatorial, massively controlling hellscape corporatocracy. So yeah, I don't think that's right. I think that assessment is based on an incorrect evaluation of libertarianism as a broader concept. I did a ramble on censorship and repression in the UK RPG system quite some time ago. Mario the Evil DM commented on that. Said, welcome to 5th generation warfare and New World Order. Only one way to be and to think. Liberty is fascist. Fear the only tools for dominations. Humanity is slave. Apple show the way for all humans. Slavery to your master. No choice is best for sheeple. They are 85% of the world. We're losing this war. Sir, you're a gentleman in the battle for freedom. Art is the best tool for freedom. Always was, always will be. We must all do some shadow work and be the best that we can be. I mean, there's a lot to unpack in there. I mean, I do think we live in a repressive age, and the repression is coming from both wings of the political turkey. And I think it's unfair to call most people sheeple. I think most people are just tired and overwhelmed. Art is one of the best tools for freedom because it can hide in plain sight. As to shadow work, I'm not sold on psychiatry. Jungian archetypes and so on are fun to play around with, but I'm not sold on the whole shadow work, embrace your evil side thing necessarily. Back to Kalergi plan. Eastbow says, once upon a time, 1,000 years ago, Muslims invaded parts of Europe, and 200 years ago, you couldn't see a single one, meaning they were annihilated at some point, genocide, replacement, etc. If people keep being racist towards white people, if they keep pushing, they will do it again. Survival is not racism. Survival is your right to exist. You can disagree if you like, but you can't convince people that they're not in danger. We feel in danger. You might feel in danger, but you're not in danger, and the statistics bear that out. Nobody is saying that you can't and won't survive. We are not being invaded. There is migration, and we go elsewhere too, and we colonized a whole bunch of places as well. We're not even being colonized in return. And all of this is beside the point. Even if one were to accept all the nonsense in that post, it would advance you not one jot towards proving that the Kalergi plan is even a thing. So please stop wasting my time. Either come with evidence or fuck off. Aaron, replying to OGGM, talking about coping with negativity. Aaron says, I think the hobby was never more diverse than the 90s, with only nerds, geeks, outcast losers, artists, criminals, and the occasional slumming preppy were involved. Now it's 90% normies, so few niche providers. Every new game seems like watered-down, homogenous, soulless, boring, frivolous, focus-grouped, and sensitivity reader-approved nonsense to attempt to sell to normies because they're the biggest demo. Negativity is up because there's so much more to be negative about. I miss artistry and authorial intent over marketing and virtue signaling. I mean, that's true, but there is also a shit ton of indie material. It's just getting your indie material noticed is difficult because the news sites largely don't cover you. The companies aren't necessarily interested in publishing something a little risky or risque. It is a problem, and the bigger companies all seem to be running scared of the Twitterati or the Xerati, I guess we call them now. It's a problem. I don't see a way around it. I mean, the scold side of the indie scene is much better at promoting each other, even though they always eventually turn on each other. they are much better at promoting each other and getting their products out there and seen by other people. And the non-Scoldy part of the indie game scene needs to do more about that. So I don't know what I know what the solution is. It's more people cross-promoting. How do you get them to do that? I don't know. What kind of hook do you use when you don't have the identity politics necessarily going for you? I don't know, but that's what we need to do, really. Not a Templar says on the Pathfinder review, why would anyone want Pathfinder 2nd edition to be more like D&D 5th edition? One of the main draws of Pathfinder to those not coming from 3.5 is character creation, and 5e sadly has pitiful levels of customization. True, until you get to higher levels, but I think 5e is more accessible than Pathfinder 2nd edition. I also think 5th edition's been around long enough that they've made a wise choice in not completely scrapping it, whereas Pathfinder 2nd edition effectively killed all its previous material in order to put out a fairly divisive new edition, which is why I make the comparisons to 4th edition. So it might have been better to maintain that customer base, and to be more like 5th edition in terms of accessibility. So yeah. Let's see, what else have we got? Credonistus says on the blacklisting video, if the who's who of blacklisters all got together and made a book of adventures, I feel like it would go gangbusters. I have long wanted to do a compilation of adventures along the lines of Harlan Ellison's 1967 Dangerous Visions. Right? I want to see people do adventures that are weird and freaky or transgressive or non-traditional in the way that they run, in the way that they work. And I think the people on these blacklists are probably the best people to go to do this sort of thing. I don't know that I have the money to make that a thing, or the spoons to put it together, or whether it would be a good idea, because it would be super ultra double plus cancelled. Maybe listing the people who contributed but not saying which work is theirs might be a way around that. I don't know. Mr. Ryan David did some Roll for Insights for me as well. Dracopol, whose comments generally make my eyes roll and make me suck my teeth, said, this generation was conditioned by communist professors who have infiltrated the system since the 1930s. They conditioned the youth to think that a country has to have uniform packaged deal of political ideology and causes to function as a society. What happened to diversity of thought? That's a whole bunch of conspiracy nonsense. Right? It is true that educational establishments tend to trend left, and previously this has been because an education tends to set one towards left-wing ideology. Is this because of propaganda? Perhaps in some classes with some professors, but much more likely is that it shifts you left because provably, demonstrably, left-wing approaches work and right-wing approaches don't so much. For example, trickle-down economics or authoritarian and punishment-based anti-crime policies. So I think I think education correlates with left-wing politics because education tends to demonstrate empirically that left-wing politics, and here I'm talking about like economics, ordering of society, crime, medicine, those sorts of things, they hold all the winning cards. We just can't get it implemented because people are dumb and the left eats itself. Judd Goswick says, commenting on Red Room and their cinematic influences, that they know their influences well and they integrate them into their work in clever and interesting ways. And yeah, I agree. That's what attracted me to their work in the first place and what made me publish some of it in the first place. Hopefully in the work that I've done for them recently, my influences and so on will shine through in the same way. One can hope. On the Blacklisted video, Captain Pazuzu says, "You're attempting to ascribe rationality to something that is inherently irrational. They ban you because for whatever reason you voiced an opinion counter to their own, and so they don't like you. That's why you're being blacklisted. You're not exactly like them and they use that as an excuse to bully you. At least it helps give you some street cred amongst the resistance." And yeah, in the short term, that's good. In the longer term, however, the constant rumour mongering and every time you do anything, someone is there to shoot you down. And the fact that psychologically we can't seem to help but give greater weight to negative comments and hatred and so on, it just makes the whole thing very difficult. And I did struggle with the blacklisting news that came out, and privately being told that this seemed to be derived from an industry blacklist and everything. It just seemed, I have certain principles which seem very different to those of other people. I have different priorities to seemingly a lot of other people, but I can't be someone other than myself. And that makes things very difficult for me, I guess. I don't see any way out of it, but it does bother me, and these rumours and the nastiness has become self-perpetuating. My brother used to do this thing where he would poke me in the arm over and over and over and over again until I snapped and punched him, and then he would go running and say, James hit me. That's what dealing with the woke skulls often feels like. They will needle you and needle you and needle you until you snap and you say something mean, and then they call in the mob. When the Red Room were talking about censorship, Penitential Arts said, "I've been active in my local BDSM community for decades and playing RPGs for even longer. I definitely agree with you. There's a world of difference between real-life BDSM and the things you do sitting around a table playing games. Safety procedures and checks that are appropriate when you're flogging someone at a dungeon party have absolutely nothing to do with rolling dice and pretending to be fighting a monster." I couldn't agree more. I'm no longer active in the BDSM community, though I'd keep an eye and an ear on it because it's an interest. But I'm afraid that even the BDSM community is starting to become hostile. If you're a cisgender heterosexual white male, or if you're just a heterosexual male, it seems like you're just not particularly welcome there anymore. So that's another subculture, another space that I think is suffering from the same thing. And bringing those kind of BDSM checklists and staged consent and safe words and so on into tabletop gaming just seems absurd and ridiculous to me. I mean, even in BDSM, you are always kind of checking your limits, testing your limits, seeing how much you can take or how much you can dish out, and for everyone to still be comfortable. But that's actual physical interaction. That's where the rubber meets the road, so to speak. In tabletop, no one's actually doing anything to anyone, and to bring in the same kind of controls and care and safety concerns is just inherently absurd, and yet people keep doing it. Let's see. Oh, more Kalurgi. Tony Richardson says, it was a real plan. He wanted to irradiate white people. I think he means eradicate. Genocide of white people. Non sequitur sentence fragment. This guy's living in a bubble. His plan is in motion as we speak. It's not conspiracy. So show me the plan in the book. This commentator was particularly thick. Tiresome. On my review of the Black Sword hack, Jack Fetch said, it looks good, but I agree it seems a little pricey. On the subject of solo RPGs, I'm still a fan of the solo adventure game books such as Fighting Fantasy, and often find inspiration for my own adventures from them. Yeah, that's a different kettle of fish, though, to the solo play thing. The solo play thing is more like being your own GM, and it's different to playing game books, which are both narrower but also have stronger narratives and can do things that doing for yourself as a solo GM/player is more difficult. Smitumi says there's more single player stuff now because Western societies are more atomized. See any number of studies on the rise of loneliness. The reasons for the atomization, even in the age of the internet, are political. I mean, this is an opportunity to fight that loneliness and to bring people together. But people seem so afraid of each other, of being associated with the wrong kind of person, you know, things like that. Let me see. Okay, Liberal Hyena said, also on the Black Sword hack, an insightful and doubtless fair review of a game I own, having backed the Kickstarter but not played, and may not be able to. On this point, if solo gamers are sad, socially inadequate loners, as must be inferred from your comments on this practice, must be deemed more iniquitous than the more common solitary vice. How would you describe such individuals who do not actually play the games through lack of energy, focus, and other issues? Probably including simple habit rather than conscious choice. Collectors, whom you also referred to, would appear to be the obvious answer, even if this is, to whatever degree, imposed by circumstance rather than a genuine preference. I am of course aware that the Samaritans are available 24 hours per day, but doubt many of the volunteers understand the phenomenon I describe, let alone offer a gaming service. And well, that's true. Maybe we should offer a gaming service. I don't know. I did not mean to imply that solo gamers are sad, socially inadequate loners, as I think I said earlier in here. It doesn't scratch my gaming itch. I don't understand the appeal. Maybe that's because I'm a forever GM rather than a forever player. I don't know. I mean, I can see how some people might get something out of it, but it just seems peculiar to me. Role-playing games are social games. It's one of the few arenas or contexts in which I feel comfortable around other people. That sort of structured environment, and it's a good reason to get people together and to get a little social time, even or especially if you are socially anxious or socially maladjusted in some way or have problem with social interactions. RPGs are the perfect place to overcome that. And that's that for comments for this last week. Not all of them, obviously, but the ones that struck my fancy, shall we say. I will see you next time.